Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series, where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, I'll be reviewing the supplement Sea Shanties, a Bardic guide designed by Elise Cretel with Aaryan, Balu, Caveat, Lector, Diane, Lacer, H. Carlan, Joe Raso, Micah Watt, Peter Harris, and Sarah Loesch for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy the content, consider using my affiliate links for online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/RogueWatson. You may be asking me now, Eric, are you reviewing this Sea Shanties supplement guide because you are in fact doing a nautical campaign, of which is literally starting in a matter of weeks? And I would say maybe. The timing actually just happened to work out very well with that. This has been in my backlog for a embarrassingly long time, as most of the review submissions have been. But yes, it just worked out really well that we are reviewing a nautical-themed player and DM supplement at the same time that I'm about to start a nautical-themed campaign. So the Sea Shanty is, of course, a classic kind of call and answer song format that they sung on the ships, and it was to bring a sense of community and build up these lore and myths and storytelling, and just people didn't have cell phones back then, so they had to come up with some fun things to do. What this supplement does is take some classic sea shanties. Most of us really don't know too many of them. Like, I think the one I knew was Drunken Sailor. What do we do with the drunken sailor? And maybe like Spanish ladies. Like, there's a few of them that if you heard it, you'd be like, okay, yeah, I can understand the rhythm. Shout out to Assassin's Creed Black Flag, by the way, which is a fantastic game that actually includes a ton of sea shanties, and that's, I imagine, where a lot of us have probably heard most of the sea shanties that we've heard. This gives actual D&D themed lyrics to a lot of sea shanties, which you're thinking, okay, that's kind of cute, I guess, if we're playing, not even if you're playing bards, but just if you want to have like fun on the, while sailing around on your ship, you can kind of maybe print these out or something and have fun with it. But mechanically wise, it actually, each one is a spell, because the bard in D&D 5e is basically just a spellcaster. I promised myself I wouldn't go off on a rant about bards. I really think bards could be so much more in D&D. There are other games and RPGs that have way more interesting bards that actually have musical effects that do their own thing. I wish the D&D 5e bard was cooler in that way, and instead it's just kind of a weirdo spellcaster. But with all of that, this provides basically unique new spells that are tied to all of these shanties. There's almost 20 of them, in fact. And there's a few interesting ideas in here. I can skip to some of my favorites. A lot of them were a little underwhelming, frankly. Like, it would give like one person +1 AC, or it would summon this cute dragon turtle, which is a fun idea, but it just kind of senses like where magic items are, but only within like 20 feet, which seems really limiting. A lot of the shanties have these group effects, which is kind of the cool part of the whole musical shanty part of it, in that you, the bard, start singing this thing as an action, just casting a spell, and then any ally can join in. I believe they have to spend a bonus action to do it, and then additional effects will happen. For example, if you're giving one character +1 AC, then if another character joins in, then they can add another person that gets +1 AC. And there's a few of them that I don't think all of them do that, but a few of them have this cool kind of group effect. And usually it's to add literally an AoE effect into a song, although I would argue that should be the whole point of bard magic and songs in general, is that they should offer AoE effects. And I don't want to ding this supplement, because the supplement's job is not to redesign the bard, and I totally get that. It just, if anything, motivated me to be like, oh, I wish the bard had cooler, like, unique effects all its own. It was reading this, because this gets to what I think the bard should be doing, which is, singing songs and having that be magical effects, and like having it affect people in an AoE radius, and even doing some of this group stuff could be really interesting. But when it comes down to it in 5e, it's basically just different kinds of spells. A few of them are also tied to special story things, which actually come into play later because the supplement does include a number of locations, which is pretty nifty. And they're not encounters, nor are they dungeons. They're basically like a single one room area, although it's usually a pretty exotic location. And then that thing will have some kind of magical thing that the players can interact with, and typically a bard can interact with it and get some kind of extra magical effect, even maybe like a permanent boon or something cool. So there's some of the shanties, which is a neat idea because they're like telling you about this like legend or something. Like there's the one about this flying airship. Have you heard of the good ship Thunder Sails? And then there's a location that has to do with this like island that's built on the bones of a whatever the lightning kind of brass dragon maybe. And you can fly like an airship in there, and you can try to get like resistance to lightning damage as long as you've got some kind of lightning effect yourself. So there's some really cool, I like the way it ties together, like the fact that a lot of the shanties are actually like legends, and then you can actually go to the legendary place is really interesting. By the way, as you can see as I'm flipping through here, holy crap, does this supplement look incredible. We get original artwork on every single page. Are you kidding me? For a book about sea shanties? Like, I guess I didn't know what to expect with this. I really thought it was kind of just a silly concept and idea. Like, okay, we're going to put some like fun little songs together for, the D&D nautical campaigns. That's kind of cute. And I opened this up going, oh my goodness, like they really elevated this thing to a incredible level. This is one of the most attractive supplement books I've reviewed in a long time. Obviously, the editing and layout and presentation, all that is fantastic. I love the lyrics as their own little sidebar thing. It looks great. But look at this artwork is just phenomenal. I love all the extra little pieces we get here, and all the locations and items all have their own like little spiffy artwork that just adds more to the immersion and the motivation I have to use this content, which is really, really impressive. So from the ones I enjoy of the shanties, I think Umberlee's Release, which is a 3rd level spell. This one, you actually have to make a DC 20 group charisma check as everybody who's singing, which is pretty unique. Usually you don't have to do an ability check on top. It's something like Dispel Magic, would kind of make you do that for a higher level spell. And in order to cast Raise Dead on somebody who is specifically drowned. So it's an interesting, I guess, kind of cheaper version, but then you can also you sacrifice money to Umberlee for every 500 gold worth of treasure cast into the ocean as a sacrifice. The DC is lowered by 1. Pretty interesting, and I do like using currency as a kind of money sink or penalty system to player deaths, and that would be kind of a neat idea. And this could be one of those things where they learn about this spell or this ritual while in a coastal town or something, or somebody on the sea, and that's just, it has a cool story behind it. It's just got a cool mechanic. Like I love all of that. And they said you can't try to get your treasure back, or Umberlee will just strike that person dead, so don't try and cheat the system too much on that one. The Thief's Protection Shanty, I just thought had a really eye-opening ability. It's a 4th level spell. They're all concentration, I believe, by the way, which I think is appropriate because you're singing the song. Singing this shanty grants you an aura of protection. All creatures in range who sing along with you receive the same aura of protection. You gain the benefit of this shanty once per day, and all affected creatures get resistance to all damage. That's crazy. Now, it does say it only lasts for up to 4 rounds of combat, but that should take care of just about every single combat except like your final boss battle, I would think. So that one might be a little too overtuned. Most of them I kind of felt a little underwhelming. And then a few of them I was like, oh my goodness, that might be a little too much. They'll give you like 1 person advantage to lightning damage, something very specific for like a 2nd or 3rd level spell. And I'd be like, oh, okay, that doesn't seem, because the shanties seem pretty fun, and I feel like they should all have kind of AoEs, and I don't know, a lot of them just felt a little bit underwhelming. +2 bonus to all charisma checks and saving throws for a 2nd level spell. Okay. One that I did like, however, is kind of a limited haste, which is, I think it's this last one on page 19, Speed of the Wind and Waves. Up to 3 creatures of your choice within range that can hear you and share language with you gain additional action on each turn. So essentially it's the haste spell, except it's an AoE haste for 3rd level, which does seem pretty cool. It doesn't like double your speed or do all of the haste effects, but it gives you the extra action, which is what most people are looking for anyway, that can do the attack action, cast a cantrip, disengage, or hide. So there's some neat ideas in here. I feel like the actual concept of magical shanties and then the redone lyrics are maybe a little more fun and interesting than the actual magical effects on some of them. But some of them, the ones I mentioned specifically, I think are the best ones. The others are just a little bit more, maybe more boring. Although I guess they should run the gamut. They should go from like first level up to whatever third or fifth level and things. But God, one of them just gives you this. This one might just be missing a word or two. It says, all willing creatures in range gain inspiration, which is very huge. Usually we reserve the DM to grant inspiration. It's a 4th level spell. And then it says, for the first day of this new adventure, all affected creatures roll with advantage. What, like all the time for an entire adventuring day? Like that's kind of broken. I don't know about that. And it's up to one day. Okay, can we just cast this once per? Like that would be the best use of that 4th level spell slot, I would think. Like one every day, everybody gets advantage on everything. That's crazy, right? Am I the only one that thinks that's crazy? It feels like it's missing some kind of limiting. Like the first roll should be advantage. Like maybe that should be something, or a specific thing is advantage. I don't know, but so I was more impressed with the story and the lyrics and the presentation than I was maybe the actual spell effects on some of them more than others. But that's not all you get with this product either, which I would have been mostly pretty satisfied if that had been it, because it just says sea shanty. So I'm like thinking, all right, that's what this whole book is about. But it also includes locations and magic items. So as I teased at the start of this review, locations, of which there are about 10 or so of these, I believe, are specific kind of magical areas that have some thing that the players can interact with, like one thing, and none of them involve combat, except for I think one of them, if you screw it up, it summons some bad guys to battle. I think it's this first one. You're supposed to donate a scale that's been given to you willingly by a merfolk, and if you have not gotten that scale by through nastier means, then it summons some bone devils to attack you. But a lot of these, if you are a bard, they give you magical boons, which is kind of interesting. So these are like permanent effects, like maybe you can cast a 5th level spell like once per day, or you can do extra like fire damage whenever somebody uses your bardic inspiration to add to an attack roll. And these are all very exotic locations, but still, I think it would be... So you couldn't necessarily drop most of these into a dungeon, although some of them might be like a part of a sea cave or something you could throw in there, but others, it would be like an overworld location that's just, it's not a full dungeon, it's just a thing that you can interact with. It's almost like if you were playing an RPG, it would pop up as like a dialogue box or something, and if you have the requisite things to do the thing, or the right party members, the right skill checks, then you can get this kind of benefit from it. So it would be an ice volcano, which has this whole backstory about the sorcerer who froze this volcano over, and you can still find their treasure there. There's a sentient shipyard that kind of reef rack that like senses if people need help, and it would like surface, and then there's all these rules involved with this shipyard and how to get into it and have it like fix up your ships and stuff, which it kind of feels like a DM Deus Ex Machina if your players are like running around in the middle of the ocean campaign. You're like, well, there's this sentient shipyard out there that comes up there. So maybe it's one of those things that you tease, earlier in your campaign, you give rumors for, and then now you've got it in your back pocket so it doesn't just show up completely randomly. There's this skeletal remains of a kraken in which you can summon the ghost of Captain Iron John, which is mentioned in one of the sea shanties. That's a good example of how one of the shanties legends actually does come into play with an actual real location you can interact with. Same thing with this, as I mentioned, the lightning island thing that you can kind of fly an airship into and gain resistance to lightning damage. I was actually really impressed with all these locations. I think it's a neat idea. I wouldn't mind having a whole supplement full of, I don't know what you would call this either. I mean, it's called locations here, which is perfectly fine, but it almost explains the fact that we don't have a lot of supplements like that, where they're not encounters, because they're not really, although they're kind of length and size wise maybe close to an encounter, but they don't really involve combat. It's more of an exploratory encounter, which, yeah, that's a mouthful. So locations, sure, let's go with locations. But I think it's a neat concept and something I would definitely look at using, and is really helpful for a DM, especially if you're going to run a nautical themed campaign, or you don't have to have a whole campaign. If you just have a location, somewhere on the ocean that your players are going to go to, then you could use some of these interesting ideas where, again, they don't have to, and they're not going to take up that much time. That's the thing. There's no, it's a cool thing where you can describe this interesting area, and it seems like it's a dangerous place. Your players hopefully will be invested, but it turns out you're not having to prep this whole big long combat encounter. It's just this simple, like, hey, players, are you going to interact with the thing? And if you do, here's the kind of stuff that happens. Moonrise Cove is a fun one, too. It's just this kind of magical, mystical, maybe even semi-worrisome area that has this creepy water. And when the moonlight shines on it, has all this D8 table of effects that can, like, even turn you into, like, a half merfolk person and do all these different things that last for, like, 24 hours. Like, that's just something cool and memorable that you can throw at the players without it being a big, like, tsunami or hurricane or something that they have to survive against, or some kind of monster forces. So honestly, big thumbs up to these locations. And these treasures are a lot of fun too. They're all to do with nautical ideas. You've got a cutlass that can give you the ability to breathe water and deal extra damage to a kraken. These leathers that are like you cosplaying as your favorite animal, of which this case is the leathers are specifically of the parrot, and then you can summon a familiar as a parrot. But that was a funny idea of having this like costumed armor idea that looks like a certain animal, and then of course the ability is you can then summon that animal as a familiar. The interrupting mechanical parrot is really funny. It reminds me of the owl from the 1980s Clash of the Titans movie, which still I think holds up pretty well. In this case, it's done. It is an owl. Well, I guess this is a parrot. That was an owl. And this one can cast certain spells, but then whenever it casts these spells, it also says the word rude because its name is Rudy, but it's broken. So it's kind of a funny little effect that can turn into its own little meme with a magic item. There's this creepy sea legs, which has this backstory about how this captain, accidentally bargained with a hag, and the hag basically ripped off her legs and gave her these kind of wooden driftwood legs, but they do give you like magical powers and things. So as, again, somebody who's about to run a nautical campaign, I'm looking at some of these going, okay, these are some cool ideas, and I can see like how all of these are very fun and themed to ocean nautical campaigns, and not even necessarily to bard stuff, even though this whole supplement in theory is designed specifically for bards, but I think it's more designed specifically for nautical campaigns and ocean and sea themed stuff, even more so than actual bards. And then just a final D20 table of fun trinkets that, gosh, again, really fun with having the sea themed campaign. So I'm overwhelmed by just how much production has gone into what I thought was frankly kind of a silly idea, with the whole like, hey, players are going to want to do sea shanties while on their boat, and maybe if a bard, it's almost like it's a very niche thing, right? If you've got a bard player in a nautical themed campaign, then here's the supplement for you. And it's funny that it's such a niche thing, and yet I'm reading this going, I am very impressed with all the amount of work and love and care that has gone into this production, and I just can't say enough good things about sea shanties. All right, let's go over my pros and cons for Sea Shanties, a Bardic guide. Pro: playful new D&D themed lyrics to classic sea shanties. I think not all of them fit very well in my head, and I actually pulled up a playlist of the shanties. I say sea shanties too many times, I'm going to get really tongue-tied. From Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which actually has pretty much all of them in there. And I tried singing along with them. Some of them worked a little better than others, but the amount of effort that went into this is actually really impressive. The fact that it does, like, instead of what do we do with a drunken sailor, it's what will we do with a drunken fighter? What will we do with a drunken fighter? What will we do with a drunken fighter when we fight the dragon? Like, it's that kind of very cheeky, like, it works. For the most part, I think it works really well, and players around the table, I think, are going to really enjoy that. Pro: over a dozen new bard spells with optional group effects dressed as sea shanties. So it's not just fun lyrics, which you might think that's what this is. There's also, all of these are real spells that you can cast, and some of them have some interesting ideas by adding in different performers who can then add a group shanty effect, which just, again, makes me want to go off on a rant about how, yes, this is how bard systems should work, and they would be much more interesting if they weren't just Weirdo spellcasters. Pro, new coastal and sea mini locations with magical effects. I really loved all these location ideas. The entire concept of just having these like single area things with a single thing to interact with and have it be a magical thing. Like, that's great. That's perfect. Just fill out the world with more of that stuff. Instead of endless encounter tables of combat. Yes, D&D is mostly combat. You know, combat is a big part of that game. If you're not using combat a lot, you should probably be playing a different system because that's just what D&D is really good at. But we shouldn't be doing that all the time, and this really helps break up the action. And I don't have any bad things to say about the locations. Pro, over a dozen sea-themed magic items. Same thing. I just was really impressed with. The artwork is beautiful, and the ideas here are really clever and smart, and they all fit the theme very well. And pro, of course, the fantastic original artwork is just awesome. It's just, especially for maybe I should stop disparaging this as just a supplement, because this is, the bar has been risen. Like, this is if this is the stuff I'm reviewing, like, gosh, for a supplement, this is really good. It looks amazing. It looks absolutely incredible. I love the art in here. Cons, my only con is I think that some of the shanty effects are underwhelming, or maybe a little bit weirdly balanced, either underwhelming or like eye-popping, like, whoa, what advantage all the time. So maybe it needed just another little pass on some of the balancing of it. I appreciate that the designer didn't come through and just say, okay, this shanty is this spell, this shanty is this spell, this shanty is this spell, because that would, you could do that, and that would be the easy thing to do. So I appreciate that they at least came through and designed entirely new spells. The problem when every time you're doing that is you're having to compete with all of the other spells. So every time I look at a spell, first level spell, second level spell, third level spell, I'm comparing it with some of those best spells, and it gets really hard to come up with effects that can be pretty close to that. I do think the group shanty effect, maybe you can tune the spell effects up a little bit because it's requiring multiple players to do it, or maybe add a little bit of a performance check in there for more of them, and then you can tune them a little bit higher. Those are just spitballing ideas, but I do wish some of the spell effects were a little more interesting to go along with how much fun some of these dang it, I almost made it. The she shanties. Dang it, the sea shanties. Final verdict. Awesome artwork, detailed songs, and fun new locations and magic items elevate this playfully silly concept into a must-have supplement for nautical campaigns with bards, or really even just nautical campaigns in general. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel, and support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Shoutouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, Brennan, Genocider, David, Eclectic, Roleplay, Roll, Christopher, Brian, Corey, Koa, 1337, Big Nut, John, Scott, Gene, Eric, Tyler, Nathan, Kemp, Crystal Lake, Counselor, Big Shep, Andrew, Daryl, the Reldron, Matt, Captain, Woody, 79, and Matthew, and Gold patrons, RPG Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Dead Lizard Lion, Sam, Lippy Spuds, Jerome, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, Scott, Revis, Gun, William, Jerry, and Tom. Thank you all very much for your support.